We're live! Oh my God! Thank you.
Yes!
I'm here with Ryan Holtz. Everybody, happy Friday. It's Barb Stegemann. This is the How To podcast, and today is on how to start your podcast and just the background on how we got Ryan Holtz, who is one of the top podcasters on iTunes. He'll tell you how that all happened, and he's won awards for his podcast, and I just love watching everything Ryan does. But what was funny is I had a lot of people writing me after we set up this studio to pivot virtually, and they were asking me, how to do a podcast. And I thought, well, I should help people and share how to do a podcast and maybe start a podcast. All of a sudden, Ryan Holtz asked me to be his LinkedIn friend. But he didn't just ask me to be his LinkedIn friend. You left the most beautiful voicemail.
Yes.
Your buttery voice was like, hey, Barb, how you doing? I was like, whoa. So I did a voicemail back.
Yeah.
And I asked you to be on the show, and here we are.
And what did I tell you on the voice message at the end? I said, you better reply with a voice message. Because I said, there's no way you're going to put speaker in your profile and then give me some sort of text-based reply. So I already set an expectation right off the hop, right?
And then I had to up you one by going, get on the video with me. And that's this voice stuff, and here we are. And I'm so excited. How is Edmonton today? What's it like there? How's the weather?
Well, I have two homes. So I live in Alberta 50% of the time and in BC 50% of the time. So right now I'm in my home in Fairmont, British Columbia. It's absolutely beautiful here. It's all mountains. The bears are getting hungry, trying to go into hibernation. The kids are enjoying outside. And this is kind of our creme de la creme place. It's kind of our I call it, this is the cockpit. This is the HQ of where everything goes down. You can step outside. You don't hear any noise. And all you look at is beautiful mountains. And it really sets the brain straight. So it's Friday. And I'm happy. But Monday's my favorite day. But I'm happy it's Friday too.
Well, Monday's a good day because you can crack out a whole bunch of stuff. Don't make too many plans for Monday because everybody wants you on Monday.
Well, I always say if you kick Sunday in the ass so bad, Monday's gonna ask Tuesday to switch places, right?
I love it. Okay, so your iTunes podcast,
yes.
You do everything. I've seen you interview actors, sports athletes, do co-hosting with your fabulous, funny wife. You've had guests on. Sometimes you just speak from your heart. So what's interesting is, how did you come up with this concept? Because it's not one theme, and yet you blend beautifully from things that just clearly come from your heart, and it's something you're feeling in that moment. I loved your dedication to Floyd George. I love everything that you've done. I've just, so moved by that. So how did this happen for you? What was the impetus for you to go, I've got to go and be a voice?
It's interesting because, I've always believed in entrepreneurship. And before entrepreneurship was sexy, where you've seen all the Gary Vaynerchuks and entrepreneurship became rock stars. And I always looked at entrepreneurship for me as a way out, as a way to really control my destiny. I come from extremely humble beginnings, and I talk about my story all the time on the podcast. My mom was a single mom. She passed away when I was 13 years old, and I virtually had no parents from 13 till 18. Behind me, it's more than a studio. It's my I Am Enough wall. So there's mementos on this wall that basically, if I have self-doubt, bring me back. So you'll see a football helmet. That was when I played football. Football, I started at 13, thank goodness, because I had a lot of rage inside myself at that time. Losing my mom, 13-year-old boy, imagine, puberty, going through all kinds of emotions. And you don't even know what you know at that age. Like I look back at myself and I'm like, Ryan, you didn't even know that at that time, until you got a little more matured. And, I really said, Ryan, you're screwed, man. You didn't get left any money. You're not inheriting anything. Your mom taught you really great fundamentals and love. And that's really all the currency I had to go on, which to this day is all I ever need or needed.
That's right.
And I started, I played football and I wanted to play pro football. I could have did it. I kind of went along those lines. And then I really started thinking at 23 when I made the decision, I said, Ryan, how much are you going to make? Because I really wanted to make an NFL team. I went out to some combines and I thought, this isn't going to happen for you. So if you come back and play CFL, no knock on the CFL, but you ain't making nowhere near the money that you're making in NFL. And so I had to say, what do I want to, do I really want to bang up my body this much? To make, I'll never forget. I would see my favorite running back in the CFL, and he was working at CIBC Bank as a financial planner. And I was like, so you still got to do another job and you're killing your body. And at that point I said, no, I have to start a business. And I started a website design and online marketing company at that time. And that's where I just thought, if I work for somebody, how long is it going to take me to get to where I need to go with these annual raises? And I always bring up the insurance job I had, because at that time, I think I was like 20, I want to say I was like 21 or 22 years old. I had a side gig as an insurance job. I was making $31,000 a year, which I thought I was the man because I had a business card. My first ever business card. So I'm like, this is awesome. I busted my butt for 12 months. I went in for my annual review, and my boss said, Ryan, I'm so happy we're going to raise your salary to $33,000 a year. And I thought, oh my God, inflation, $2,000?
Poverty, you know?
Yes.
Just,
So long story short, I said, okay, I got to open up my own business. And, through opening up my own business with my marketing agency, we did really cool campaigns where we got featured alongside Barack Obama by Twitter, alongside Coca-Cola for some of the initiatives that we did. And from that, it gave me a lot of publicity in mainstream media. So I did a lot of TV, radio, and magazines. And I really thought, oh my gosh, if I would have known this, I probably would have took journalism in school, because it really tied. Yes, it tied up all my skills. And I said, man, I love to talk to people. I'm very curious. I like to do research. I love to push, the envelope. I don't mind if people want to get upset with me or they want to cry. We can do it all today, and I love the emotion behind it. Right. And fast forward into where we are now. And I said, what would be the best medium? And I actually thought, I had some offers to have like my own radio show or a TV show. And I thought, Ryan, you're a digital marketer. This mainstream media is not doing so well. Like, this is not where the eyeballs are going. The eyeballs are going into digital. So, what would be the best vehicle for you to use your voice and combine everything? And this podcasting thing came up. And everybody who's listening, the one reason I chose podcast was it's passive consumption. So I don't want people to have to view my content and interrupt their life. I want them to be able to do the dishes, fold their socks,
Just a sec. I'm going to go do my laundry. I'll be
Yes. Yes. Go get a mani-pedi. And you can listen to everything, while you're doing it and still multitasking. And I think the podcast really sets that up for that. And I just thought, you know what? I don't have to deal with a producer. I can say exactly what I want, and I can be extremely unfiltered. That being said, you're right. I don't have a specific niche I follow. Of course, entrepreneurship, lifestyles, self-improvement. But I tell everybody, and everybody listening, pick one or two words in which you're going to wrap everything around. So my two words are, one is provoke. It's on my show cover art. And the other word is curiosity. Provoke, I love to provoke. Provoking gets somebody to actually think. Provoking gets people to turn off autopilot and become real humans.
Be present.
Right?
Be present.
Yes. George Bernard Shaw said it best. The reasonable man adapts himself and woman to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable person. Right? So, going into the word...
you're right. Right now during COVID,
yes.
we're watching businesses shut down. We're watching hardship with the economy. We're watching, all kinds of hard things, and resilience and being able to pivot. It reminds me of, Marcus Aurelius said, doesn't matter if it's 40 years or 40,000 years, mankind's the same. Humankind is the same. So you have to adapt, because guess what? What happened 2 years ago is not this life now. And if we're not ready to adapt, we're going to be left behind.
When they say, in the stock market, you have a market correction because finances, everything hits the home prices and everything. I love to look at COVID-19 as a human correction. Everybody's dirty laundry's coming out. Everybody's insecurities, everybody's confidences, everybody's everything. I love it. Like, even in my business, I call them, I don't want to say dinosaurs, but my older, beautifully more fertilized human beings that are over the age of 70. And I have one gentleman as a client. He's like, Ryan, I will never touch this technology crap. I've been in this industry and business too long. I don't want to do it. I'm Skyping and Zooming with him, and he's killing it. And he said to me,
that's it.
Right?
That's it. How do we help people move forward? So we have a lot of people who want to start podcasts that are watching today or will watch later. Some people wrote me and said, look, I can't watch it now, but I want to watch it later. So we'll be live on our Facebook page. I know you're recording too.
Absolutely.
So first steps? What's the first thing you would tell someone who's come to you and said, Ryan, I love your podcast. I want to start one. Where do I begin? What's the first thing I should do? I know you have 6 cameras. I mean, you've really built up to something really exciting, Ryan. So where does someone that's just beginning start? What kind of software should they use? Like where do they begin?
Well, the good news about that is everybody who's listening after this, give them my contact info. I can send them a free PDF. It goes through all my gear. I call it a gear bag. So I literally have links to Amazon for everything that I have.
Thank you.
You can start as little as, you can buy a microphone for $50, an ATR. People get too glammed up in the equipment. They got to go back and do this first. Don't create a podcast, create a cause. Okay? The
Beautiful.
Podcast is just a conduit.
Don't create a podcast, create a cause. That is really powerful.
100%.
So people can get behind the cause. That's 100%. Where your following comes from. You won the People's Choice Award for that.
For the By Blacks magazine for best Black hosted podcast in Canada. Yes. And
right?
And that's
congratulations.
Thank you. And that's another thing, right? I mean, 97% of podcasts, when they start, they don't make it past episode 7. And the reason that is they don't think about it as a business. And I started my podcast, but I also have my other company. So my other company paid for my podcast, but I created the podcast as a passion project. And technically my podcast has been up, 2-3 years, but the first 10 episodes I shot, I let it sit for like a year and I didn't do anything with it because I got busy. And then I just thought, where do I want to take this? Going back to your first
moment? When was that moment that you, since it sat for a year, when was that moment that you got turned on, switched on, and you said, I am addicted? Because now you love it. Like, it shows.
Love
it. You say yes. You jump in. You are there. I see the energy and the cause. But when did you get switched on? What was that day that you went, oh my God, I love this. Start publishing them. Get them out. Everybody, these are great shows. What was that moment?
I had a conversation with my wife, and my wife said, Ryan, you were going to start this show, and you left it at episode 10, and what are you doing with it? And I do. As a father, I think of my kids, I hate the saying when parents say, do as I say, not as I do. Are you crazy? Your kids are watching your every move. Do as I do. If you want to be a great example, close your mouth and do. That's my opinion. Don't talk about doing if you're not doing. Do it. So my wife held me accountable, and she kind of said, it wasn't like, I'm an accountable person, but she kind of brought it up and was like, well, are you going to do it or are you not going to do it? And she's like, I think this would be something very good for you to do. And I said, I'm really confused as to what direction I want to take it. And I kept going down this one question, which now people are pushing it out, and I do disagree with it. They said, find a niche. Find a micro niche. I think I disagree with that statement 100%.
Okay.
Ryan Holtz, is it Barb Stegemann or Stegemann? I don't want to pronounce your name.
It's Stegemann, but it's my ex-husband's name, so you can say it any way you want.
Okay, Barb. So Barb, if I said to Barb, pick one thing that you're about. You're so diverse. You're so multifaceted, right? So so my wife says, Ryan, you don't have to pick. You love health. You love cognac. You love talking about psychology. Maybe you want to get some psychiatrists on your podcast.
Yeah.
You love This Is How We Do It. Montel Jordan, 90s hit. Bring him on your podcast. You love Oprah Winfrey. Let's get her life coach Tim Story on the podcast.
Nice.
And the one guy that I absolutely love, and I got to give him full credit for, is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan brings on absolutely everybody. And I mean, now, people are talking about politics, and I don't care about the whole politic thing, but Joe Rogan is a master at being able to sit down and chop it up with anybody from all different walks of life. And that, for me, really resonated because I said, this guy built something extremely special. He, to me, is he's number one podcaster in the world, hands down.
Wow.
He's not.
That really inspires me because I started this. I call it How To. It's just
100%.
When people want to know how to run for office, how to have a podcast, how to start a social enterprise, how to become a speaker. Just because so many people ask me questions and I feel badly when I don't have time to answer them, I thought, why not create something where I can actually help people? So it is, just like you said, it's not niche based. It's not perfume. It's not my book. It's not social enterprise. It's stuff that people want to learn about. So let's bring in the best.
But Barb,
and
as I'm looking at you right now, what if I said, Barb, tell me what it is about your hair. What do you like about your hair? Barb, what about your aviator glasses? Why do I see those glasses in every photo? Barb, how come I see the word love? Like, even though it's how to, I'm like, but I want to know you as a human. And if I'm listening to you and we're listening to a podcast, we're going to connect on a human basis.
Absolutely.
I cannot tell you how many people send me messages from the podcast or email say, Ryan, I came in because I seen you and your wife were talking about food, but man, I left with some inspiration on how to start a business or why I shouldn't start a business. Yeah. And that to me,
your wife has a foodie thing. You guys are really funny together, actually.
Yes.
Really good chemistry. What's her food thing? Tell us about her food blog, because the pictures were delicious.
So my wife is in the rehabilitation field. She's had her own business for 12 years. My wife is superhuman, but she literally is a side gig chef. She's absolutely amazing at cooking, and she has an Instagram page called Food for Love 99, and she just posts pictures of the food that she cooks. When I met my wife, I wouldn't say my relationship with food was not one of passion. It was, I got to eat. So I got to eat. I got to eat to survive, and then I'm moving on to the next item of the day. But my wife would sit down and she's like, oh my God, look at this spinach. I'm like, spinach? Like, if you can make spinach sound sexy to me, like, we're getting married. We're getting married right now, right? And she started talking. But what she did with food for me that I love so much is she gave food and she told the story behind food. So that's where, again, for me, my whole life, curiosity provoke. I love the story behind things. You started 7 Virtues, got into Sephora. I could care less about that. I want to know when you were pulling out your hair and you were like, I'm going to do something that's going to be absolutely massive. Yeah. And the story behind it, you know?
Stop pulling out my hair.
Yeah. And so my wife, again, you know, great storyteller and very, very creative when it comes into the kitchen. And it's true creativity.
Wow. Well, I think you have great chemistry. It's really fun to see you both together. I love your Instagram too, your kids, just the exchange. Okay, so we had some questions.
Yes.
A friend of mine wanted to know about music rights. Do you know anything about that for podcasts?
Of course.
Sure, because they're not sure if they use the equipment, how long.
Yeah, so music rights, there's a site called Epidemic Sound that has fantastic music. But we call it royalty-free music, meaning this is music that is licensed by creative people all the time. Like, you can get royalty-free music for free on YouTube by literally typing in royalty-free, and you read in the description and the creator will say, hey, no problem, use my music, but maybe give me a shout out in the show notes. So even on my podcast, and I also like to support indie artists because, you know, somebody's creating a really cool lo-fi beat or something like that, and I use in the podcast. I want to draw attention and say, hey, if you need a beat, like go check out my guy on YouTube and he'll set you up. So type in royalty-free music for podcasts and you're good to go. Again, Barb, everybody, because I knew I was going to do this today, and just to give context, this is the first interview I've done in terms of how to do podcasts, right? So I thought about how can I maximize value for Barb's audience. So I created a whole PDF, goes through the music, goes through the equipment. It's totally free. All somebody has to do is text me, email me, and I'll send them the PDF and we're good. So a lot of these questions, they'll have a nice resource for.
It's very generous of you. Okay, so I'm blown away by the look of you inspired me. This is my second podcast interview.
Correct.
And I said, oh my God, I have Ryan Holtz on. I've got to have his name. How am I going to do that? My son, I was like, Victor, get up here, figure it out. Victor comes up very quickly. We puts it up very quickly, but we didn't know how to do that. And so I was like, I got Ryan Holtz coming on. Because your podcast has all kinds of bejuzzle, like it's all you've got like words coming across, and you've got snippets of film showing. I wanted to like show a bit of one of your podcasts. I don't know how to do that yet. Like, how you have this really magical, and I know of course you've been at it for 3 years. I've been at it for 3 weeks, but how do you do all that beautiful video interlay, the guest, we learned how to do the names, the words coming across. So if somebody's, turned off the volume, they can watch. I mean, very thoughtful, very, very thoughtful, very context driven. It feels like a full show on your, I wouldn't even call it a podcast. It's a show.
It's a show.
And I wish I could show right now a clip of your show.
Sure.
I'm going to learn that because that's why I'm asking. How do you do that? Is that post-edit? My husband.
Yes.
Is it? Okay. So tell me about this because it's magical.
Well, it's interesting because as you're talking about it, so podcast, technically I started about almost 3 years ago, but just remember, Barb, just like everybody else listening, didn't touch it for 2 years. So all this successes came in the last 1 year. But
wow.
What you're saying is, it's funny because as we're talking and we're listening, and people who listen to this down the road, I'm almost trying to, like, my podcast is under the context of there's some creepy person in the corner and they're witnessing two friends talk. And they're just like, oh my God, I don't feel like this is a podcast. This is just Barb and Ryan talking. So as we're talking right now, I'm trying to hit your psychological mind with some visuals. So when you talked about, hey, and Ryan's podcast, yeah. So you overlay a little video of some guy or some person sitting in a corner, and people, it's funny, they don't realize they love it, but they do because they're like, oh, that makes sense, right? But to answer your question, subtitles. Those are the little words you see as people are talking, right? That's all done in post. Back again when I was 24, I had a video production online marketing company. So I know how to professionally produce and edit videos. It's a bad use of my time because it's very time consuming. And I hated doing it after I sold my last company. And it's funny how life works because your skill sets are evergreen, you know? And that's why I tell everybody, invest in a skill. Don't buy a car. Invest in a skill, period. The skill will pay you 10 times. Yeah. I never sold cars. I just marketed them. But that all happens. We use an editing software called Final Cut Pro. And Final Cut Pro is, you could shoot a full-blown Hollywood movie and edit it on that software. It sounds, very aggressive for people, but it's very easy. There's lots of free Headliner, people can write this down. Headliner, you can pull in a video, it will do subtitles for you, kind of an automated system, very much, but for me, again, you hit the nail on the head. I said, Ryan, I called it the Ryan Holtz Show podcast, but I also called it in my mind, the Ryan Holtz Show goes anywhere the world goes down the road. So podcasts aren't cool, that's why we're like, okay, let's get on YouTube because we got to make video based. If YouTube and podcasting's not cool, content's always going to be cool. So where can I put my catalog on?
So where do you put your content? So someone can go to your website. Where else can we find your content? Because I want to ask you, first of all, iTunes. How did you get on iTunes? How did you get your podcast on iTunes?
Well, iTunes, you just simply submit your podcast. They, there's a certain set of requirements. And then once you meet the, show art requirements and all that, they'll basically approve your podcast. And there's something called a feed. So it has to feed from somewhere else. So you have to have a hosting company. Libsyn is a great hosting company. And they'll basically host where your files are. And then that's how, when you listen to it on your phone, it has to pull from somewhere. So it's pulling from a server. And they're specifically made for podcasts. And, again, with the podcast, so it's on YouTube. And YouTube, just remember, there's psychology in a lot of this, right? When you push out a podcast or you start to publicate it, and one thing I would say to people is, everybody gets so jammed up about the audio on a podcast because it's an audio podcast. But YouTube is the second largest search engine that's owned by the first, which is Google. And for me, I didn't go YouTube first when I started. I went audio first. Now, my whole strategy is different. I go YouTube first. That has to go on YouTube. Then I chop up all the videos. That gets used for social media. And then the audio goes into Spotify and iTunes, right? Wow. So, distribution is something we have to talk about too on this show, is that if YouTube one day comes and says, hey man, Ryan, I don't like you anymore, you're done. I'm done. I lost all my audience. So 50% of my listeners listen to my show on my website that I own, right? So this is why.
Smart.
Yeah, because I'll go to my iTunes and I'm like, we got 109, 110 reviews, but to me I feel like it should be more. But then I'm like, well, wait a second, Ryan, you're actually directing 50% of your listeners to stay on your website, and then I'm trying to get email addresses so that we can build a relationship. I don't spam anybody or anything, but people are like, they actually mentioned it to me because they said, Ryan, is there an email list we can get on so that at least, every, Monday when your podcast drops, it'll drop into our inbox? And I said, oh yeah, sure. I guess I should do that. And it's funny how your audience starts conditioning you, right?
That's right.
Because they're like,
they'll tell you what you're good
at. They're like,
That's
man, you got like, where's your call to action, man? Like I know you don't want to come across salesy, but they're like, you're doing like zero, like do something. And I'm like, because and people can attest to this. I'm like, I don't like bugging people. I've never been that way. I don't want our first interaction to say, hey, Barb, I want to sell you something. I never want that.
I remember my first interaction with you, and it was so blessed. It was this lovely voice saying, hey, Barb. And I was like, oh, my God, and pushing me out of my comfort zone. Yeah. I'd never done a voice. And I was like, oh, there's a little icon. I could take a few seconds and then ask Ryan to come on my show that I don't have yet. Let's create a show.
Yeah.
Sure. And we are a few weeks later. But you have such a talent at reaching out to people, and it's really warm and friendly and beautiful. And you gave me the confidence to do this, and I'm learning from you, and I know everybody watching now and later on will learn. And I love that you said it's not just the subject. It's got to be more than that.
Absolutely.
We've learned about your wife, your kids. We've learned about your background. I was raised by a single mom too.
Yes.
And I think that makes us resilient. We come from different backgrounds, but I know humble roots. We were on welfare. And, I learned one really important thing in life is that no one can judge you.
Yes.
No one. No one gets to judge me ever. Yes. And that's really led me that someone's gaze, as Sartre called it, the gaze, when someone looks at you with that judgment, you decide if that gaze is on you or not. And
it's none of your business, though, Barb. It's none of your business what people think about you.
Right.
It's none of our business.
Right.
Now,
and the important thing is to protect your joy.
Yes.
I think there were some gifts. I think there were real gifts in the skill set of learning in humble roots, that knowing that you are you. And I meet so many people that are stuck. They're worried about what someone thinks about them because they've had no hardship. There's a blessing of hardship because
there is.
You can't stop and worry about what someone thinks about you.
Do you know what the root of passion is?
What's the root of passion?
Suffering.
Yes.
When we deconstruct passion, it always comes back to suffering.
Wow. And it's all interpretation of suffering. How did you and I get so blessed that we saw, and you said it right off the top, I mean, God bless you, you lost your mom at 13, you were on your own, and yet you saw the good, and I feel that way too, but I don't understand why I get to be this way, because I know a lot of people who've gone through the same hardship, and they're not okay. And I always think about how can we lift our brothers and sisters up? How come we got to be so fortunate to just be happy? It's
kind of interesting. Let's bring up something funny. Usain Bolt, right? Usain Bolt literally publicly says he sleeps 50% of his day so that he can let the training on his body take effect. Okay? So, Usain Bolt, somebody could say, hey, he's genetically blessed. Okay, but it's been debunked scientifically that people are genetically blessed in certain areas. The only thing that we have is work, is attitude, and the lack of ego. Get your ego out the door. Ego's the thief of joy, period. Is to look inside yourself and ask yourself the hard questions. If somebody sends me a hateful comment, I react like this. You know what, Bob? Thank you for your comment. I want to let you know that I want you to keep listening to my podcast because I know you have some things going on in your life that is not good. And I want you to get to a better place. And then Bob might fire back with, fuck you, because now I upset him even more. But we know Bob isn't happy in his life. We know.
And Bob is creepy.
And I'm like, Bob, get in the corner with the other creepy person and watch Barb and I talk so that maybe there's some things that you can pull for yourself, right? But this is where I'm going. Yeah. So it's people who are trying to kind of steal happiness from other people are not happy themselves. So so let's say if you're the person that somebody's trying, is being attacked, you can reply with two ways. You can get really hateful and use your ego and battle back and say, screw you and look at who I am. Or you can go the humble, more confident route and say, hey, I understand that person's going through something right now. And I've actually turned some really bad conversations into some really blissful friendship conversations to this day.
Out of that friction comes joy and love, right?
And I'll tell you, I've had the people literally tell me, even to this day, they're like, Ryan, I can't believe I acted that way towards you. I feel so bad about that. And I'm like, I love this, because I'm like, if we could all do this as humans, we see what's happening with, Black Lives Matters and all these things in the States and COVID-19 and all this hate and all this nastiness that's being spewed into the world. And yes, I'm never going to take away from history and the books and what's happened. There's been nasty, bad, terrible things happen, and those don't just go away. But if we keep going back there, we're never going to go forward. I don't think we should ever forget our history. I think history is extremely important. But, we're living here now. You have a 1 in 7 trillion chance of being born. Take your life and do something with it. It's a gift. You matter.
It's a
gift. Yeah.
You know what? That's so beautiful. I have one little quote that I want to share with you. I say it.
Please.
Say it to my kids since they were little. It's Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest soldiers. He wrote the Meditations. He led through war and strife. He said, when you wake up, be prepared to meet the angry, the lost, the jealous, the jaded. Now lead. Oh, what, you're surprised? That's life. That's par for the course. But if you don't like it, go in the corner in the fetal position. But if you want to live your blessed life that you were given, be prepared to meet the angry, the lost, the jealous, the jaded. Now lead. You have no energy. It has nothing to do with you. And 100%. You meet people, he said, they have ghosts around them. Yep. They talk about what someone said about them. That's a ghost. You don't want to be that person. That has nothing to do with you. Right?
No. And you want to dial in, there's people like Robin Sharma, the 5 a.m. Club, his book,
he's from Nova Scotia.
He's a fantastic person, he talks about that setup of the day, and really trying to get onto that. There's a lot of great stuff going on in the world. You and I are talking from opposite ends of the country, and we're doing it with ease with technology and the internet. Think about the internet and technology, how many opportunities it's afforded. But it's just like anything else. It's a tool. So humans can use the tool for good, or we can use the tool for bad.
And think about all the people doing their laundry right now, listening to us.
There you go.
I mean, we've made that experience much more joyful.
I always like, the first thing I think of, though, even when I talk to people, it's even since I was a kid, and I'm a bizarre person, and everybody knows about this. I've talked about this publicly. I've been obsessed with feet since the age of 13 years old.
Feet? Did you say feet?
Feet. So much that my business card is an actual sock. So
my gosh.
So 13 years old, I would always wonder, how come this person doesn't take care of their feet? Why do their feet look like grenades? Why do their toes look funky?
You see the shoe? I see your shoe. You see my shoe?
I see the shoe in the back. I see the stiletto. I see the black one.
I'm like, who else has a shoe on a shelf? Anybody else? On a shelf. I've been alone in the world, and I'm like moving my head.
Yeah, no.
Picture.
I know. And I gotta send you my business. I gotta send you the business card sock. It's a men's sock.
I am your twin.
Yeah. So I'm obsessed with feet. So I'm like, I think for me, I always wonder, because and people don't talk about a lot of this stuff. I'm like, I don't care if somebody has, somebody told me one day, because I love my suits and stuff like that a lot of the time, but I also love my urban chic Euro style. And I'm like, I find it fascinating on dress code, because there's one of the wealthiest people I ever met. He said to me, Ryan, we're standing in this event, this like speaking thing. He says, who the brokest person in the room is? I said, how? He says, the best dressed.
Interesting.
And I was like, really? He's like, no, I'm telling you. He's like, I'm not saying that if you dress nice, you're broke, but he's like, I need to see some range. I want to see some range. I want to see you in a t-shirt. I want to see you in a ball cap. I want to see you in a set of jeans. I want to see you just maybe disheveled a bit, like you just worked out. Like, I want to see the humanity. Because he's like, when I do business with people, I try to engage their authenticity in what they're actually showing me, not what they're trying to show me.
That's beautiful, because then you can see through things. And then of course, people who like to wear their hearts on their sleeve or their
So there was I remember meeting him twice. The first meeting, tailored suit, looked fantastic. The second meeting, shorts and a shirt, like he just finished, like it was, and
he's being real. He's being real, right?
No, the first thing he said to me though was, he's like, I tossed you up, didn't I? I threw a hard ball at you. I wanted to see how you'd react to everything. And it again, right? It's just really trying to understand what makes people tick and the things that they don't show, right?
Oh, hey, I want to tell you cute. Blair Brian Nichols is watching from California, and he's an agent, and he said that you've just inspired me to do my laundry. I just wanted to share it with you. You're doing some big things today. We're helping people get through their day. Blair, that's wonderful. I'm
do your laundry. Thanks, Blair.
Okay, so you said Monday's really busy. Is that the day you drop your podcast? Is that what you're saying? Is that when it goes on online? Do you have a certain time or day? Because a lot of people ask, when's the best time? Like, I don't even know if Friday at noon is a good time, because I know everybody's getting ready to go drinking or make dinner or do whatever. When is the best time? There must be something too that I know on Instagram and social media. They always say, Friday at noon is a good time. So I have no idea what applies to the pod, or maybe there are no rules.
The podcast. I mean, you can drop it any day you want. I mean, I try to keep it on a certain day. I've been very tardy and bad on that. Your cadence your cadence does matter. On average, I'm putting out 4 a month, once a week. I'm gonna start increasing that to 2 a week, which is 8 a month. And I pick a day. Usually, it comes out on Sundays, Mondays. But sometimes when there's current events happen or something happens, I'm like, no, I got to drop this podcast right now. And I kind of use the podcast as a live diary too, because there'll be a thought that comes through my head. I use Evernote. I love that app, but I have
What's it called again?
Evernote. Fantastic.
Evernote.
Correct.
And how do you use this? How does this work?
Well, Evernote, it's just for my own note taking. So some people use their notes app on iPhone. I love Evernote because it goes across all platforms on laptop and all that. But I have a folder in there. It's called Brain Relief, because for me, I got so many ideas, going through my mind, every single hour. And the good ones, I know they're good, but I'll forget them like 60 seconds later. So I drop the idea in, and if it's really good, sometimes I'm like, you know what? I put in a little folder that says podcast topics for future. Now, at the same token, I might not feel that same topic the way I did in the moment. So I'll just do a podcast right there if I'm available. But no, it doesn't matter when you drop them. But everybody creating a podcast. Okay, it's one thing to book the guest. That's an art in itself. Done. Right? Patrick McDavid took me 8 months to get on my show. Right. And like a video on Instagram once a week. I tried not to be stalkerish or creepy, but yo, what's up, Pat? How you doing, man? Hey, Pat.
Your voice is so great.
Pat, I seen your shoes, man. Like, I would talk to this guy like he's just my friend. And on the third video, he was at the Bellagio or something like that in Vegas, and he turns around. He's like, dude, I gotta tell you, your energy is incredible. Another thing, here's a pro hack for people. If you want to get somebody on your show, don't just send them an email and a boring direct message. Video message and audio message, because people want to know, what am I getting for my time? So if you say, hey, if Barb says, hey, Ryan, I need an hour of your time, the first thing I'm going to look at is you're online. I want to see what the heck is going on. And then I want to see your energy, because if you open up the show and you're like, hi guys, my name's Barb.
It's
and
not
today,
much of a tale, but it's
we're gonna talk about how you should, shoot yourself in your ear, because this is terrible, right? Like, I need somebody that's like, hey, Ryan, I want to talk about the fact that I heard you on Barb's show and you love feet. First of all, my feet are 11 out of 10. Okay, the petty's on point. But let's take it a step further. I know this really great podiatrist who sees feet all day long, and boy, does he or she has some great tips.
Right?
I'm like, holy smokes, we are totally booking this in, because you gotta sell why you should give me your time. So that's first. Second of all, you have to market the show. You've seen my clips and stuff, right? It takes time to produce those. And then you see my comments. You see that I go in and actually respond to people's comments. And I don't just say 100 thumbs up. I get into some, hey, Barb, tell your beautiful husband and your son, they're awesome. And, send some of that seafood over from Nova Scotia. Because last time I was in New Brunswick.
I need your address. I'm sending you perfume.
Yeah, last time I was in New Brunswick, I literally took a box of that seafood and I put it through the airport. And I swear people were going to jack me and I got offered money. That stuff was like, when you bring the seafood, gold. It's gold. It's solid gold. So those are the types of things that you have to think about of starting a podcast. But again, don't start a podcast, start a cause and start a show. Okay.
We have a question for you from Bev Ketty, starting a new podcast and wants to know how to market it tastefully. The subject matter can be around some, heavy issues. So they don't want to sound like they're sitting around discussing heavy issues that have affected families drinking wine. Sort of, and I guess that's instinct, I would say. But do you have any advice on when you're dealing with heavy issues? I mean, obviously your motives are key. Why you're doing it should be from a place of concern and care.
Yeah.
But, what else would you add to that for Bev?
Well, when you talk about, great question, Barb. And sorry, what was her name?
It's Bev Ketty.
Hi, Bev Ketty. How are you? It's a great question. I think when you talk about heavy issues, you have to decide, are you coming at it from the journalist aspect? Are you coming at it from an opinion aspect? And once you decide those two things, because I tell people all the time, don't just talk about a heavy issue to talk about it. Talk about it because you have a perspective on it. And I think the way you deliver the perspective is where the tastefulness and respectfulness comes in. But I don't want to be dishonest and say that when you talk about heavy issues, you cannot please everybody. So if you step into the ring, you might get a little bit of negative feedback. Here's the upside to it. You gotta step in the ring. You have to get some negative feedback on it. I think if somebody comes out and says something that's tone deaf, let's say we're talking about Black Lives Matter stuff, and you're not black, and you're talking about, hey, I totally feel your pain. Watch it. You don't feel the pain. I'm sorry. No. If you're having the surgery, Barb, I can't physically feel the pain of your surgery, if this makes sense, right? That's
right. Bev just answered you. Bev's coming as a journalist.
Yep.
And Bev's a male. It's Beverly David Ketty.
Hey, Beverly David Ketty. Yeah. So she's coming out as a journalist.
It's a guy. It's a man.
Oh, it's a guy.
Bev
sorry.
Yeah. It's okay.
So what he could do is, if he's coming out as a journalist, the one thing I do, because when you do have a podcast, think about it as a media company. So the first thing I'll do, like when George Floyd happened, I went into Twitter, I typed in the hashtag George Floyd, and then I went to Google and I looked at NBC, CNN. I looked at how they wrote their headlines. So instead of me saying, I think this is terrible about George Floyd, I wrote a title that says, George Floyd, has created a ton of conversation around the world, because that's more journalistic. And then I give some backing up points. And the points sometimes are not opinions. They're based on facts. So the facts are, these were the cops. This is the city it happened in. So what I can say to you is, if you come at it from a journalist, come up with a good headline. And there's something called Headliner, Google Headliner. It'll actually take the headline you write and rewrite it for you in a way that's clickable. Great, right?
Wow.
Okay.
Write that down.
Yeah. Just go headline writing engine, and it'll come up. You'll have a ton of tools. Come up with the headline and then literally go with the facts that it's publicly known. Because if you're not CNN or NBC, I'm assuming you do not have all these fact checkers on staff and journalists on the ground. So be cautious on that. But once you come up with the facts, now you're having a straight conversation, and I think it's very tasteful. And I do think it's great when people do interject their personal, somewhat kind of feelings, because there's a difference between a feeling and an opinion. So if you say to me, hey, Ryan, I feel your pain, that's an opinion, but you don't feel it. But if your feeling towards me would say, Ryan, I'm seeing what's happening and I don't like it. You're now telling me this makes me feel something. I'm not saying I feel your pain, but I'm saying based on what I'm seeing right now, I don't like it. You're not going to upset me with that, because you know what you're doing? Don't talk to me like a victim. Talk to me like you're empathizing with me, not sympathizing. You can't sympathize with something you don't know about. Sorry, you can't.
Right.
But you can empathize based on, hey man, you're a human, I'm a human, I don't like what's happening right now. So I hope that
Exactly.
answers his question.
You're absolutely right. I hope so too, Bev. I think that's really clear because we as citizens for one another can't step back. We have to engage together and lift each other, right? Because I believe always the stronger you are, the stronger I become. It's in my best interest to strengthen you and lift you, and you do the same for me.
100%.
And we become a community, right? I have another question for you from Bruno Baran. How would you do a podcast on trauma-informed yoga for first responders? Classroom teaching is not a problem, but how to transition that to podcasting. And Bruno is a good friend of mine who actually was the impetus for me to start this podcast because he said, Barb, how do you do a podcast? And I said, Bruno, I'm going to get Ryan for you. Oh, and Bev wanted to say thank you.
You're very welcome, Bev.
Yeah,
very welcome.
Bruno's question, back to Bruno. How would you do a podcast on trauma-informed yoga for first responders?
Now, by trauma-informed yoga for first responders, does Bruno mean first responders are using yoga to help with like PTSD and the trauma? Like, I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, Bruno, is that what you mean? You can just respond. That's what I'm taking it to mean. Because I know that Bruno and his wife
and while he's responding, let's give some context, because first of all, I love that topic. So that to me would be a micro niche topic that is in high demand, because the one thing about having a niche, if that's the route you do go, the niche is serving a very specific audience that actually is underserved, which would actually put you in a place to grow quicker. Okay, so that's a great topic.
Bruno has responded. Yes, it's for PTSD, and also Rob Dolson is loving the show. A great soldier who has given amazing talks on PTSD. So you're getting to some really beautiful human beings here, Ryan.
Thank you for your service, my man. Thank you. Okay, so based on Bruno's question, the way I would do it is, first of all, great topic. So that's half the battle. So I would do things like, if I'm starting the podcast, assuming it's up and running, you got your gear, you're on iTunes, it's listed, now you're about to press your first episode, I would just love to have local, you could have current firefighters, police officers, military on the show. You could have retired, firefighters, police officers on the show. And I think what would be really cool, I've had a lawyer, a judge, and a police officer and a convicted criminal all on my show. And I love the context of it, because I wanted to shed light to people of, first of all, don't look at a convicted criminal as this dirtbag who's terrible in life. There's 2 sides, 3 sides to every story. I'm not saying that the person, what they did was not bad and they shouldn't pay a price for it, but I'm also saying I do believe in redemption and second chances, because some people do come out and there is reform. Then we take a criminal defense lawyer, and I hope Bruno's listening because I'm just trying to give context. Then we take the criminal defense lawyer who defended the criminal. We get her perspective. And then we get the judge that's sitting there in the middle, hearing the prosecution side and the defense's side, and understanding that they don't put their emotions, feelings into it, because they have to basically hand judgment based on the law and what's written. And then you move it over to survivors, family of victims, family of the person who committed the crime, and then the first responders that had to show up and quote unquote de-escalate or clean up the mess or prevent the mess from getting worse, for lack of better words. And if Bruno's starting a podcast like that, I would advise Bruno to think about, if it's episode 1 and it's, hey Rick or hey Sarah, how do you deal with showing up to a car accident and somebody's passed away? And I think that you have to be careful the questions you ask first responders, and make sure it's like an off camera, like, how comfortable are you with this question? Because a lot of first responders, I have friends, and some of them are, extremely open in talking about it. And other people where I feel like maybe I've overstepped and I've asked them a question, they're kind of like looked at me and I'm like, okay, that's enough of that. Like, let's go to the next, like, so how's the Oilers game, or how's the Toronto Maple Leafs? Because I could just see that it's just a thing for them. They're like, I don't talk about those kind of things. It's not my business to say if you should talk about it or you shouldn't. But I think that topic is much needed. And I would do interview style questions to guests. I think that podcast specifically, though, I would make it like a 50 to 75% guest podcast, meaning I'm not just going to sit there and talk about it. I'm going to bring on guests to give you education about it.
Yeah, and Bruno wants you to also know about his life. He lost his son last year. He was a fireman and worked at the airport, first responder, and he passed away. So he wanted you to know that. So you're carrying on Benny's memory, Bruno, and you're serving him well and being a voice for Benny. He lives on. Very
sorry to hear that. And this is a great segue because the video I just put out, it was Give Voice to the Voiceless, right? Somebody featured me on LinkedIn this morning and they said about, Ryan's family is very important to him and all these things. And one of the reasons I started my podcast was I always thought, could you imagine how cool it would be let's imagine Bruno's son, Benny, had a podcast. Bruno would be listening to Benny's podcast every single day because Benny's no longer here with us. So I said to myself, when I'm long gone and my kids are still living, wouldn't it be cool to hear your dad or mom chop it up with people and you're like, damn, my dad was the man, or my mom was opinionated, or, just to sit there. I wish my mom had a podcast. I would die to hear my mom's voice. Yeah. I would die to hear my mom's voice.
I feel like we're hearing your mom through you.
Yeah, well, like you absolutely.
We have a maritime expression, Ryan. What's in the cat's in the kitten?
You know what's funny? And it's just a quick side story. My mom, the two words I would describe my mom with 3 words, was humble, over communicator, and loving. My mom would we would go home at night, very humble beginnings. Wouldn't matter if we got in the door at 6 o'clock at night or 2 a.m. in the morning. We would listen to this radio show. It was here locally. It was called Tom Lucas. And we would listen to this radio show for 60 minutes every single night. And my mom we would just talk. And she would actually wake me up if I started falling asleep so that we could keep talking. And all she would tell me is how great I was, the things I was going to do in the world. And it's amazing because fast forward, when CBC did a whole expose on our show and stuff, the reporter lady brought it up and said, Ryan's love for radio started with his mom and the 60-minute conversations in which they would have when he was just a little kid, right? And, I'm very empathetic to people. Bruno's story about Benny, I wish more people would go out and share their story. Do not make yourself smaller because somebody else cannot be bigger. Because I always say, I'm like, let's say you tell a story, Barb, and 2 people out of the 10 fire back a message and say, how dare you, I hate you. But let's say 6 others. But let's say 6 other people out of the 10 said, you know what, Barb, today I heard your story and I didn't commit suicide. The 6 that didn't take their life is worth the 2 that sent you a hate message saying, why would you talk about that? People don't get that, right? And I always tell people, the one word we need is hope. And I can't get hope always out of a book or watching a show. I need somebody who I know, who I can relate to tell me, hey, Ryan, I've been through that. I'll tell you, I got through it. And I see they're living that, and they got through it and they're thriving. Mm-hmm. To me, that's inspiration and it's hope. And I'm like, because to me, I'm like, there's no person, and I like to tell people this, and this is the podcast, is that there's no, I laugh at people who worship other people in life. You're just as temporary as I am. I don't care if you're the president. I don't care if you're prime minister. I don't care if you're Barb. I don't care if you're Ryan. At the end of the day, we're humans. So to me, I'm like, if Barb can do it, so could I.
That's it. Well, I'll tell you, it was Bruno that asked me how to do a podcast. And then you found me, which makes me go, whoa.
See?
That's kind of cheeky.
It's the universe.
How did you find me, Ryan? I'm kind of curious because Bruno wrote me, and then you wrote me literally within days, and here we are just weeks later, and there's Bruno going off to do this beautiful show that so many people will be inspired by.
I knew you were going to ask me that. I knew you were going to ask me that question, and I knew the answer a couple weeks ago, and then it was something on Instagram, and something came. I don't know where it was. Something that came on my Instagram, and then I think I literally looked at you. And the first thing I thought was the glasses. It was really interesting because I'm detailed. I'm like, those are funky glasses, and then I clicked on it, and then I'm like, oh, I see the speaking stuff. And the first thing I tried to do is I want to see a video of her speaking because I'm like, I want to see that you seem like you're very boisterous. And then I went on the digital deep dive, went to Instagram, and I see the studio set up. You're standing there. That's how I knew you're at a standing desk. Like, I'm very visual, right?
Yeah.
Your door's somewhere over there. It's looking
That's
over
right.
there. You know, like I pick up on those things. So
There's a shoe.
Yeah, the shoe. So it's funny because people ask me all the time, hey, Ryan, why did you pick that guest? Or how did you get inspired to have that guest or conversation? Sometimes it's a long story, and other times it's 2 seconds. I seen the person, there was just something. And I'm never wrong when I go on my gut. I'm never wrong when I am true to who I am or my gut. I've just never been. The biggest mistakes I've made is when I doubted or second guessed myself. It was a car wreck. It was terrible. But every time even when I trust my gut, even if it doesn't work out, like, it's like, okay.
You were true to yourself, though.
I can live with that.
True to yourself. You go to sleep at night. Your head hits the pillow. Ryan, oh my gosh, we're almost at the end of the hour.
Yes.
And it felt like seconds. This was so much fun. But you know what? We've done it, but now there's the how-to after. So you've got some information for people. How can they get that program you created for everyone? Because you said earlier, in case some of you didn't catch it, Ryan was preparing for the show, put together all the equipment, all the things you need. How do people get that from you, Ryan?
Yeah, there's 3 ways. You can reach out to me on social media at Ryan Holtz1 on any platform, or Ryan Holtz, just search it or Google it. Simply go, use the email info@ryanholtz.ca, or text 780-218-5899 and say, hi, I'm this, and I'd love the PDF, and give me your email address, and that's a wrap on that. I'm also thinking of doing some maybe one-on-one coaching for podcasting. I don't know. I have a program kind of set up where
You're getting the thumbs up. People are doing thumbs up. So I think.
I own a marketing agency, and that's my bread and butter. My podcast is a part of our companies, but I get asked this question so much, and that's what I'm saying today. This is the first interview I've done where somebody said to me, hey, how do you do a podcast? And I'm like, I think it's time I got to talk about how to do a podcast. So, I mean, you definitely got me going, and you gave me the bump on that. So if people are interested, reach out to me, and then we'll chat.
Ryan, I'm going to also, if you want, I can put your email at the bottom of the post on Facebook as well.
Of course.
And you know what? This has been so much fun.
Yes.
I was so grateful you reached out and left a voicemail for me. And here I am doing a podcast. And learning from you, I even put the name up for the first time ever because I was like, Ryan's coming on the show, everybody, get the thing up on the name. So we're all learning together, and it's just really beautiful. During this strange time, we can all lift one another. And you know what? You have friends that are writing you already from the show. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Ryan, thank you for your time. Have a blessed
week. And hold on, before we end off
here,
everybody can attest to this. You are one hell of a human being. This is your second show. You killed this show, and I love the way you were very articulate, and even the graphic and all these things. So you are going to do extremely well. Nancy, does the name Nancy ring a bell? You mentor her, Kevin O'Leary's executive.
Oh my gosh! We're mutual mentors to each other.
She started liking a couple of my photos on Instagram, and then I messaged her, and it's so funny because I actually want to get Kevin O'Leary on my show. So I don't know. I don't know Nancy, but I messaged him a few weeks. I messaged him a few weeks ago on LinkedIn, and I never heard back. And then all of a sudden I'm reading Nancy's bio, but her and I started talking, and she went crazy about you. But I don't know her, but she seems like a fantastic human. So this is weird.
Up with Kevin O'Leary, even though he didn't give me a deal on Dragon's Den, no hurt. He missed the boat.
Yes.
I got Nancy as one of my best friends, so I won. It's all good. But no, it's funny because it doesn't matter if someone doesn't invest in you. The good fun is this is a journey, and you know what? I got to thank Kevin O'Leary. This is cute for you. After I won on Dragon's Den and became the first woman from Atlantic Canada to get a deal, everyone thought we were going to duke it out. I opened for Kevin O'Leary at a talk. I thanked him. You have to thank the people that challenge you and don't believe in what you're doing, and then it makes you go, well, maybe I should really prove myself, and you work harder for those who don't believe in you.
I can honestly say this.
Pleasure of telling him.
But Barb, Kevin O'Leary might have been your shining, knight in armor, so to speak, because I can say this: the no's means so much more than the yeses most times.
Yes.
And assuming somebody that you reach out to or you pitch to, assuming they're not rude and, you know, malice. But if they say no, I tell people, don't take it personal. It's business. They, you know, and 6 years later, they might be your number one client or investor. You never know.
Look, Nancy, one of my closest friends, works with Kevin, and I got to actually tell him we were in, you know, at the time 100 stores, and he actually said to me, I missed the boat. And I said, yes, you did. And that was kind of fun, kind of vindicating. But I think we can be cheeky with each other. I think in life, if we don't take ourselves too seriously, and like you said, get rid of your ego, be very okay with dancing with one another and being okay with someone saying no and coming back years later and being like, hey, you inspired me and you weren't wrong. Maybe I had some more work to do and look what I've done. And then I think we respect each other more, don't we? And it's almost like guys in the sports field, right? You guys are taking each other on in the team and you're all, oh, and then 2 seconds later, you're like, I'll buy the beer. Okay, I got the pizza. That's called, you know, being a good team player. And, you know, when we're in the sport of it all, whether it's business or competition, that's great. Go hard. But then, out of it, all good friends. Right?
Listen here. Celine Dion doesn't have anything on you, okay? I seen your post the other day, okay?
My doppelganger.
I do my homework. Celine Dion might have sang a couple good songs. A couple, okay? And I told, just like I said to Ellen DeGeneres on the Ryan Holtz Show, I said, listen, you're going to have to work to get on my show. So Celine, now that I got Barb, Celine, you're going to the bottom of the list, Celine Dion.
I sing a little more like Pearl Bailey, a little Dinah Washington, more of a bluesy, jazzy kind of thing. But, Ryan, I could just talk to you all day.
Absolutely. We will talk more.
You've really made so many people's lives. I think you're going to get a lot of contact from people, and you are going to ignite so many people to change the world for others. And I feel really, really good to be a part of that. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm very humbled, and welcome to the Team Holtz family, my friend.
Yay! Have a beautiful weekend with your beautiful family.
You too. Let me know when everything's ready to rock.
We will.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.